Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam, and in today's video we're going to be doing a monthly wrap up of all the books that I ended up reading in March. I was working very hard to finish my TBR this month. There will be also a full reading vlog of the majority of the books that I read from my March TBR. I am filming this a few days early and I have one book left on my TBR, so hoping to at least get that started before the end of the month. Like I mentioned, I am filming this a couple days early, so I will be inserting a clip near the end of any of the additional books that I finished. But without further ado, let's just jump in and talk about the books that I read in March. As I'm filming this video, I have read 10 books this month. I feel like I started off on a roll. I was reading a lot. I was very excited to be reading a bunch of books, and I thought I was going to get a lot of books read, but in the last week or so, have really slowed down. So let's just talk about what I have read. Starting out the month, I read Swept Away by Beth O'Leary. I ended up rating this 4 stars. This book, as well as, you know what, most of these books are in reading vlogs this month. I will link them up in the cards as we come to the reading vlogs that they are in. So if you want to hear my full thoughts as I'm reading, feel free to check out that video. But I did end up really enjoying this one. In this one, we are following Lexi and Zeke, and they have a one-night stand where they get swept away on this houseboat out to sea, and we follow them trying to sort of survive the elements. And I really enjoyed their connection. I really enjoyed them learning more about themselves, learning about each other, and sort of dealing with some things that were happening in their past. The issue that I had with this book was when you're reading, for the most part, you have to just suspend your disbelief. But for this one, the fact that there was not a single boat safety device on this houseboat was wild. Like not a single one. Like, I understand you need some element to progress the story and have like this conflict, but like not a single thing. And then by some point there just wasn't enough, I don't know, urgency or attempt at solution to try to figure anything out. And then lastly, some of the events that happened felt like they were just put in there to add trauma. But I did end up listening to the last like 2 hours of this book on audio because my library hold swiftly got returned to the library. So I had to finish this on audio, and it was really well done. I thoroughly enjoyed the audiobook as well. So yeah, 4 stars. Solid start to the month. Then the next book that I read, which I feel like was such a surprise to me, was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. In this one, we are following Xavier and Samantha, and they meet and have this whirlwind night together before Samantha moves halfway across the country to move back home to help take care of her mom, who is dealing with dementia. And so it was a very heavy story, but also talked about living for the small moments and just making the most of every day, which I really enjoyed that messaging. And I also just feel like the sort of heaviness and emotions that are in long distance relationships were really effectively portrayed in this book. It just felt like a very real romance that these characters did really want to be with each other, and they really had this special connection, but were just stuck in their circumstances. There were a lot of relentless modern day references, which I don't like. Like, some things were a little too on the nose for me personally. I like to be slightly removed from the real world and real world events. And so there's a couple instances that were just a bit too relevant, I guess. But all that to say, I still had a fantastic time, and this is definitely by far my favorite Abby Jimenez book that I have read thus far. Next, I continued on with the Game Changer series by Rachel Reed. So I read Role Model. This one I think was one of my favorites in this series. This was another 4.5 star read. I had an excellent reading month. I'm just realizing that now. A lot of these are very highly rated books, but in this one we are following should I even share? If you haven't read this, I feel like saying who it's about is a bit of a spoiler, but we're following a hockey player who has recently switched teams because of some drama, and also the team social media coordinator. And it was just a really beautiful story of especially the hockey player coming to terms with who he is and really finding the things that he wants to put his energy into and the things that he finds important. Their love was just so sweet. Just the last two chapters, especially, made me tear up and just my heart. Ilya also makes a lot of cameos in this book, and his just like one liner perceptiveness is just my favorite thing in the series overall. And then immediately following that, I ended up reading The Long Game, also by Rachel Reed. This is the last book that's currently out in the Game Changer series, and this was another 4.5-star read. I honestly thought that I was going to like this one a little bit more than I did. I thought that it was going to be a bit more heavy, even though there was a lot of mental health discussion and rep in this book, which I really appreciated. I just wished it went a little bit deeper. Our characters kind of kept talking about having this discussion with each other, but we never really saw the discussion in the way that I kind of expected. And so I wish that we got a little bit more conversation about what our characters actually cared about and wanted to put effort into. And the ending also wrapped up a little bit too easily for me. I wanted there to be a little bit more like another conversation, really. That's all I wanted. I absolutely love Ilya and Shane and just their story and all the hockey team. It's just so sweet. I love them so much. Next, I ended up reading The Giver. This was a very interesting read for me because for the longest time I swore I was never going to read it, and I ended up reading it and rating it 4 stars. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought the concept of living in this sort of beige world that had all of these rules and restrictions was so fascinating. Like nobody really broke out of what was considered normal and acceptable. And then there was this element to this book where specific things were described to our main character and just felt magical in the way that the author described these things. I do feel like there was a pretty slow start to this book, and the ending was very quick, wrapped up very quick, and I feel like didn't really explore much more to the messaging, which I did appreciate. There was an interesting message on like shared experience and choice, which I found very fascinating. And I can definitely see why people continue coming back to this book and rereading this book at different points in their life, because I feel like depending on where you're at, you would get a different messaging out of this book. Very interesting read. Definitely made me think and also want to give a few more classics a try. Next, I finished off the Lady of Darkness series by reading Unrelenting Winds by Melissa K. Rorick. This is a prequel novella that you're supposed to read after the entire series because it does give some spoilers of the rest of the series. And this follows some side characters that you meet later on and sort of their backstory, which I really appreciated. It was very interesting seeing our characters kind of struggle with their powers and how they kind of get control of them. With that being said, I do feel like the beginning was very slow. The conversation style was very cordial and it just seemed very different to what the rest of the series was and felt a little out of place. And then I feel like once we kind of got this build up of our characters forming this relationship, the ending was very like glossed over. I feel like we could have gotten one more chapter of one of our characters specifically trying to hone the relationship with their powers. And so for that, this was a 3-star for me. It was fine, but it didn't personally add much to the story, like of the overarching series. Next, I did finally pick up The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and this was the easiest 5-star I have ever given. Even though this book itself is fiction, there's so much truth and so much based on real events and real stories that, especially knowing the events of World War II from learning them in school and then following our characters through, knowing what was coming but not knowing how it was going to impact our characters was devastating. I cried 4 times. I feel like it's difficult to say that I enjoyed this because this was such a heavy read, but I thoroughly enjoyed the way that Kristen Hanna wrote this book and made you feel like you were actually in the story and living out these events. There were so many times that I put my book down and had to consciously remind myself that I'm not, in fact, living my life in 1940s France. A masterpiece. Like, I don't know what else to say. Definitely go into this in the best mental headspace of your life because it's heavy. It's very heavy. Like, this is a long book and I just never wanted to stop reading it. I needed to know what was coming next. And I feel like it was just such an impactful read and a very important story. Then I read Lucky to Be Yours by Shannon O'Connor, and unfortunately, this was only a 2.5-star read for me. This did not work for me. In this one, we are following 2 female main characters that are kind of at a point that they don't want a serious relationship. They kind of just have hookups and they continue to run into each other at various bars around town on St. Patrick's Day. And then we jump forward a year and they meet again. A very strong plot point of this book that you find out like literally page 1 is that one of our main characters is in love with her best friend, but her best friend is in a relationship. And the way that it just kept being brought up just gave me the ick. It was very like off putting. So I didn't really love her to begin with. And then, like, this was only a novella, but I feel like we glossed over a big part of some of our characters' past, which was then brought up again. But because we didn't actually know much about what happened, I didn't feel connected to the characters at all. And then also, once the relationship happened, was very quick. They had been together for like maybe 24 hours and they were like obsessed with each other. It just didn't vibe with me. I went in like having a good time and then it very quickly turned into something that I wasn't really expecting. I did really enjoy that. I think basically every character that we meet was LGBTQ plus in some regard, and so that was really fun and interesting. This was also so spicy and so spicy at the weirdest times. Like, our characters went and met one of their grandmothers, and then when they were leaving in the elevator, they just really had to get at it. And I was like, y'all are in a retirement home. Can we not wait? So yeah, that was not for me. I will not be continuing on with any other books in this world. I don't care. And I also, which was no fault of the book, the author at all, I had to read this on Hoopla because that was the only place that I could get it for free. And then, like, Hoopla doesn't connect to any e-readers or anything. It was just on my phone, so my eyes were not having a good time. Next, I read the new Finlay Donovan book, which is Finlay Donovan Across the Line by El Cosimano. This was so fun. I always have fun with this series. They're just like silly, fun mysteries. They're just fun. I don't know how else to explain it, and I don't have a lot of opinions about this one specifically. This one was definitely not my favorite in the series so far. I think this is like a 3.5-star read for me. I was also super distracted while I was listening to this book. My brain was going off and thinking about other things, so I guess for that, it didn't hold my attention quite as much as maybe some of the other ones did. This is just such a silly, fun time. Like, our characters just get into the most ridiculous situations totally by accident. And I just love the cast of characters that we're sort of collecting on the way. It's so fun. I love the series so much, which is such a surprise considering I struggled with the first book so much. And then the last book that I read this month, at least so far, is Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. And for this one, is a 3-star. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I thought. I think I just wasn't connected to the characters at all. And so for that, I feel like I just wasn't in it as much as I kind of expected to be. In this one, we're following Selena, I think is her name, and she is a seer. And in this sort of, our main character considers it a cult, but it's not a cult. They take the eyesight of these girls and are given these powers that let them see things in a different way. They have these like magical threads. That's very fascinating. And in order to help her sisters, she's given a task to get close to this vampire conqueror and inevitably take him out. Evidently, our main character learned some things. We all know where this is going. But I just feel like there wasn't enough plot happening or something. I don't know. It was fine. I just didn't feel very connected to the story, so it ended up taking me a very long time to read. Hello, everybody. Just popping in to talk about the last book that I read in March, and that was Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune. I received this book as an ARC through NetGalley, so thank you to NetGalley and the publisher and the author for approving my request. And this was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved this book so much. I think this might be Carly Fortune's best work. In this one, we are following Frankie, who is getting married. We know that she's had this kind of whirlwind romance, and then she wakes up the next day to a note from her fiance that the wedding is called off, and she ends up going on her honeymoon a couple months later with her best friend, George. And it kind of goes from there. There's a lot of this book that is predictable, and you can clearly see how obsessed George is. But something about it was just done right. This focuses a lot on nature and the importance of protecting the whales, various relationship dynamics and working through them, and also rediscovering yourself and finding your spark. It was just such a beautiful story. I teared up multiple times and I just absolutely loved it. So that's the last book that I ended up finishing in March, and I'll pass it on to Sam to wrap up this video. But those are all the 10 books that I have read this month in March. Overall, a great reading month. Most of these are 4 stars or higher, which is insane. I don't think I've ever had ratings that high. But with that being said, that's everything for today's video. If you have read any of these books, please let me know. I would love to chat with you. And if you would like to chat spoilery thoughts, all of my links are linked down below to the other corners of the internet. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.